Just out of curiosity, before I get into this, how many here are playing in the health or health tech space? Oh, not many. How many are interested in the health tech space? Okay, well, this is really going to be directed at some lessons learned in health tech, and the message is really the old Field of Dreams line: "If you build it, they don't come." Maybe before I get into that, though, I'll introduce myself a little bit more. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my fourth preventive health startup. Some would define that as a little bit of insanity. I got into this pretty passionately after losing my dad to cancer at a young age and realizing that we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system, and it's up to each one of us to figure out how to stay out of it. And generally, we suck at that. And so Newtopia is a personalized health company that is all about disease prevention. And we utilize a novel combination of genetic testing and behavioral profiling to really inspire individuals who are at risk for obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and stroke to reduce their risk. We partner with large US insurers and employers to deploy disease prevention programs and have some awesome results, have some great partners, and are really starting to take off and rocket. But that's not really what I'm here about to talk about tonight. What I'm here to talk about tonight is a big problem, and I don't think this is just about health. I think this applies to other areas as well. And it's this problem. And by the way, that is not me standing in a cornfield, although I've been trying to get that hair for a while, and I just keep losing mine. But this is the problem that many innovators have, and especially in health. You think that the job is all about coming up with the idea. If I just come up with the idea, if I just figure out how to help people be healthier, I'm made in the shade. And the problem is, it is totally wrong. And oftentimes, it's hard to come up with the idea. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy to come up with a novel way of keeping people healthy or coming up with a service or a device. But the trick really isn't coming up with the idea in health. The trick is actually thinking through your distribution strategy and figuring out who's going to buy it and how this is all going to work. And I can tell you, over 4 startups doing this, this has been the hardest part every single time. And even with Newtopia, we are 7 years in. It took the first 5 to figure this part out again. And so there are just a couple lessons that I've learned that I wanted to share. There are some gates, and this may be applicable and familiar to those of you in other areas as well. But the gates look something like this. Once the idea is there, once you've got a product, I like what Janice was talking about, you're constantly evolving, you find product market fit. But here's where it gets really hard, because in health, it's interesting, people don't generally buy health for themselves. It's an interesting thing. People don't buy prevention for themselves. For the most part, what people buy for themselves are aesthetic. If it's going to get you a date or in your genes, I do something more crude, you'll buy it today. If not, someone else has to buy it for you. And so figuring out who's going to buy it is really critical. For the most part in Canada, that's the government or your employer or insurance company, which makes Canada a really tough place because the government doesn't buy anything. And not from startups. And so Canada is a really tough place to innovate in health tech because it's really tough to figure out who the buyer's going to be. So if you're selling direct to consumer, which I've tried, you better be aware that the next step is around credibility. And so whether you're selling direct to consumer, you've got to be prepared to create a brand, because guess what? You may come up with the greatest invention possible to help someone with their health, but they're not going to buy it from you unless they trust you, unless you've built some credibility. And the trick there is branding. Now, most of us in this room, as innovators, don't know much about branding and certainly don't have the funds to build a consumer brand. So now you're left to figure out how to do it without doing that. So the obvious next step is you want to go B2B or try to find someone else. And here, credibility is really important, because now you've got to figure out, well, why are they going to trust you? Enter gate number 3. You've got to think through the economics as well. Because if you're going to sell through someone else, you better figure out what's in it for them. Why are they going to sell this for you, either to their employees or to their members or to their customers? And so the economics and figuring out your distribution economics and proving that it works economically, key to getting someone else to sell it for you, which leads to the 4th gate, probably the most important, which is proof. Just because you've got a cool PowerPoint deck, just because you've gone through the accelerator program, if you can't prove that this thing works, why in the world would anyone sell it for you? Why would anyone buy it from you? And proof gets tricky in health because it usually requires pilot programs, which take a long time, which you've got to prepare for in your burn cycle. It takes a while to sell them, takes a long time to prove them. We're in a 3-year randomized control trial now. That's been a really tough thing to plan around, but it's really critical. And then once you have that proof, the last step is you need some champions. You need some organizations that are going to step up and say, I'm going to take a chance on you. I'm going to go out on a limb with you. I'm going to take you and make you in the market. And once you've passed all of those gates, oftentimes in that order, that is the only way to get that field of dreams. That is where success lies. So if I can just leave with one thought, the idea, awesome. And if you're coming up with it in health, I want to talk to you and I want to help you because this is a passion of mine. But if you haven't thought through distribution, you're dead. Don't waste your time. Thanks.
Questions?
Hello, testing. Awesome. So my question is for health as a overall market you've reached in. Do you find that regulation has been a barrier? So giving customers insights, like being the CEO of my own health, is that a policy that is ever fought from a market that you've reached into, like the government or employers?
Yeah, it's huge. And so, knowing your regulatory environment, knowing whether you are medically necessary or whether or not you're a lifestyle and whether or not you've got to deal with Health Canada or the FDA or something in between is huge. And it's an area, it's one of the reasons why health has been under-innovated here in Canada because the way to get up there hasn't been really well established. It's why it's on fire in the US because the Obama administration and the Affordable Care Act has opened the floodgates to innovation. Now, it doesn't all get commercialized because they haven't all thought through the distribution economics, but yeah, thinking through your regulatory is step number one. It's Health 101.
We have a question here from the obstructed view seats.
So my question is, being that many healthcare providers are dependent on traditional methods that are already working, how do you overcome the barrier of introducing new methods that are integrating both, tech solutions into this, and how do you overcome that and get them to use it?
Yeah, I think the key answer there is oftentimes try to avoid the provider. So by provider, you're oftentimes talking about the doctor. And it's not to say there's nothing wrong with the doctor. Doctors are wonderful, but they don't teach innovation and they don't teach change and they don't teach business in medical school. And so oftentimes to rely on them as a sales channel or as an innovation channel, really difficult. What you want to look for is who's got the pain. The doctor doesn't have pain. They're going to get paid whether you come 5 times, 15 times, 20 times. Fee-for-service is not led to innovation. Who has the pain are the people who are stuck with the bill. Now in Canada, that's the government, really tough group to sell to. The key though is enterprise, employers, they feel a lot of pain. Insurers, they feel a lot of pain. Go to where the pain is. They are going to be very compelled to want to buy and change, not the people making money every time you show up.
Thank you.